All right, well, thank you everybody for joining us today for another episode of Advisor Access. And we are very fortunate to be joined by our wonderful CEO today, Joshua Bush. Today we're going to be talking about his wild adventure to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. So Josh, thank you so much for joining us today. We're excited to hear all about your adventure. And before we kick off, can you just tell us a little bit about you and your obvious connection to Avenue 2 and leading the troops?
Sure. Yeah, Chris, I think, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on. I'm a big fan of this series because if nothing else, it showcases what our team does and how well they do it. So often, people come up to me and ask me, oh, well, what do you do? Oh, you're in a travel business. And, oh, I thought you went the way of the dinosaur. And, when I really get into how our team gets into not just where you want to go and what you want to do, but why is it that you want to travel, and that they're able to extract that essence from you and then perfectly craft an itinerary. So whether they're doing their own trips or whether they're planning them for other people, that's why I really love this Advisor Access series, because I think it gives the general public an idea of what it is that we do as a team that we just love to do on a day-to-day basis. And they hit it out of the park. But yes, so I'm the CEO of Avenue 2 Travel. I've been in the business now for well over 15 years, coming up on 20 years. Second generation, my mother started the business over 35 years ago. My father is involved in the business. And so family business, very much so. And have looked at what was important. So I started off, going off to school and not wanting anything to do with the family and wanting to kind of go my own path, and had worked in consumer finance and a number of other industries for a while. But since I, was raised traveling, it was a value that was instilled in me at a very young age. And so I really wanted to make sure that I came back to something that was so important to me. And so to be able to have a career that allowed me to travel, but then also, as I got older and a little bit more mature and a little bit more wiser, the more important thing was that to be able to share something that's so important to me with others, I think is critically important. So to be able to allow other people, other humans, to interact with other humans around the globe and, breed greater tolerance and understanding. And that's really the why for me. That's the WIFM of to be able to create better global citizens. And so, every time we put a trip together, we're creating interactions of other humans around the globe. And so that's what's really important to me. And so I have worked tirelessly building the great team that is Avenue 2 and the great family that is Avenue 2 to allow not only more people to travel, but to allow our team to travel, and selfishly allow myself to travel. So, I've been very fortunate in that I have been on all 7 continents, 49 states. I got one left. A little over 75 countries. So working on checking the boxes there. And so one of the things that I have always wanted to do was climb Mount Kilimanjaro. And that has now kind of spurred me on to other type of mountaineering pursuits. And so I've also done Mount Kosciuszko, which is the highest peak in Australia, which really isn't high at all. It's just really kind of a glorified hike.
All right. So Kilimanjaro, was your first big trek. Obviously, you've been hiking probably your entire life, because this is certainly quite the undertaking. But how did you come about this particular trek for Mount Kilimanjaro? Obviously, there's many ways to go about it, but you were a part of a very specific group. How did that group sort of form? And can you tell us about that?
Again, as you said, it had been on my bucket list, or my list, for many years. And it just so happened that some great close friends in the industry, really led by Jack Ezon at Embark Travel, put together a list of friends, and he started, I think, with about 50 people, because you don't know how many will actually opt in, especially for an adventure and a trek like this. I mean, it's a pretty big undertaking. You're going to be intense, and you're going to be dirty, and showers are not prevalent, and the luxury travel industry that we're in is used to Four Seasons and Frette linen, and they want the creature comforts that come with that 5-star luxury experience. And so roughing it isn't always best. So we started with a really big list, and lo and behold, so many people signed up for it. There was a great big interest. I mean, he was hoping to get 5 to 8 people to commit. And when we actually ended up paring it down and having the entire list go, there was just about 20. There were 19 of us in our group that went. And that group, that size, was way beyond the limits. And I think that had we not been in the industry and, all very big supporters of Abercrombie and Kent, who was the tour operator who put everything together and escorted us up the mountain, had we not been very influential with them, then I think that they would not have let the group go. And so much so, there was so much interest in it that there was actually a second group that went literally the week after us. So there were a couple people that we were hoping that we were all going to get to go together. Not that there was anything wrong with our group. It was just absolutely spectacular. But there was two groups that ended up going. So there was almost over 30 people that had expressed interest and ended up going all to the summit.
That's incredible. So for a client that might be considering this, obviously they're doing it on a private basis, but if you had a small group of friends, what is sort of the ideal maximum group size for the particular?
Yeah, 8 to 10 is really what most outfits will recommend, because that's the right number of people, to porters, to guides. So there is a big production effort that goes into this. So
let's talk about that, because obviously every outfitter is going to do this differently. And for the guest that's very used to high-end luxury travel, A&K obviously rolls out the red carpet, as in a manner of speaking, given the situation. But what sort of differentiates their crew and their setup from some of the other operators?
A&K absolutely just hit it out of the park. And one of the things that we knew right away was just when we met our head guide named Dismas. We were at the Arusha Coffee Plantation Hotel, and we were all at a big long table, and Dismas came and started doing the initial briefing, because we were going to get started the next morning. And he is an absolute gentle giant, very intimidating. He's well over 6'5". He's got to be close to 285 pounds. Very soft spoken, but very methodical in the way that he would just describe the whole experience of what we were going to be doing. So one of the most striking things about Dismas was, and one of the most poignant stories that I remember is that first night he's telling us, he says, your safety is my utmost concern. My team is going to be monitoring you. I'm going to be monitoring you. And if at any point in time, he's like, listen, you might be the head honcho in your business. You might be, the chief in your family. But on this mountain, it's my mountain, and what I say goes. And if I don't think that you can make it to the top and do it safely, you're not going to go, and I'm going to turn you down, and we're going to take you down the mountain kicking and screaming, whether you want to go or not. However, if I think that you can make it up that mountain and you don't think that you can, you will. We will make sure that you get up there, and we will get you up to the summit, and you will come down, and you'll have a fabulous experience. Because the last thing we want to have happen to you is that if I know that you can make it safely, that you wimp out and then have those regrets later. And so I thought just those two things together, of him saying if it's not safe, we're going to bring you down, but if you can make it safely, we will make sure that you do.
Yeah.
And that's why Abercrombie and Kent has a 98% success rate in their summit, is that I think that they've got the best chief level guides. Now, they all then continue to surround you with porters and other guides, and that are just extremely knowledgeable, and to make sure that you've got an amazing summit experience. A couple of other little things that they do is in the equipment. So they are providing you a huge tent for 2 people. And you might say, that's frivolous. Why would I need that? I just need a 2-person tent. Well, when you've got to put your snow gear and your pants on in the morning, and you need to stand up to be able to put your legs in the legs of the pants, you want to do that on the inside. You don't want to go outside, stand in the freezing cold mud and get that all over yourself. And there's dust everywhere. So just to be able to have that little luxury of making sure that you're comfortable for you're in warmth of your tent when you're getting dressed in the morning, you're able to tie your shoes without doing it in the mud. And is also the other thing that we saw is with the smaller tents that you've got to crawl into them. So to be able to stand up almost fully within your tent made such a huge difference in that you're not trekking in dirt and mud and dust and all of the other types of elements that come with being out in the wilderness in the wild. We had big tents for our meals. We had the most amazing chef. Now, the food did get a little monotonous, but for what it was and where it was absolutely superb and phenomenal. And if you are looking to lose weight, this is the trip for you, because they will pump you full of calories every single day. You can eat limitless cookies and Snickers bars. They literally gave us like we would sit for a break and there would be a guy, it was like reverse Halloween. They would come and they would, trick or treat and hand out these candies to you and then stand there and watch you eat them because you needed that caloric intake. Because as you start getting higher and higher up in the altitude, your metabolism just burns so much faster. And so you really need that high caloric intake to be able to, function throughout the day. So the food was phenomenal. The equipment was phenomenal. The guides are phenomenal. And that's why there is such the price difference with A&K. Not to mention, again, that 97, 98% summit success rate is just off the charts.
So obviously this is a lot of gear, a lot of equipment. You're heading up the mountain with a lot of food. As far as the extra weight you yourself carried, what were you responsible for trekking up the side of the mountain yourself versus what did they have porters take up for you?
So again, this is the A&K difference. What they would take would be the tents, your cot, and then a small duffel. So, some of your extra gear, your sleeping bag. If you had other shoes, what have you, you could put everything in a small duffel bag and then carry that from there.
So they carried the small duffel for you, and then
Correct.
Whatever you had your own pack.
Yep. And so technically, the only thing is if you had other personal items like camera gear, other personal items, your Camelback, because you need to be drinking a good 5-6 liters of water a day, which sounds like an awful lot of water, and it is, but you need that to keep hydrated and really to fight off the elevation sickness that you could get if you did become dehydrated. But any types of things of a personal nature, you would have to carry. Now, the one thing I would say is that you do have the option of getting an additional porter to carry things for you. So we had people on our group that opted for a private toilet, that opted for a private shower, as well as, they opted to have other personal items carried for them. So there was an additional surcharge, and it was actually, very, very reasonable to have another person porter come with you. Now, I had tons of camera gear and lots of stuff. So I did have an additional porter between myself and me and Matt, my tent mate, good Freddie Matt Elliott, who works for Virtuoso. We shared a tent together. And so we had an extra porter for some of those items, and he stays with you during the entire trek. So if there's something that you need out of your bag or what have you, and we became, good friends as a result of that.
Wonderful. Well, and so it certainly sounds like if you are capable and accustomed to carrying your own gear, you can carry it, or if you're not, you can carry none of it.
But for the majority of us, it was, we had Camelback for our water and our hiking poles, and that was pretty much it.
Making it much easier, especially as you get higher up in the altitude. Yeah. One thing we should have touched on, I think, right at the beginning was training for this hike. What the elevation is that you're gaining during this hike, and how long did you in advance, and how long, what sort of training did you do to prepare for it? Because it's not certainly something somebody used at sea level who lives at sea level would just wake up one day and do.
Yeah. Well, before we talk about training, let's just talk about elevation in general. And one of the things that I learned on the mountain is that elevation affects every person differently. You are genetically predisposed to handle elevation, either positively or negatively. We had people that have run the New York Marathon. We had people that were super, super physically fit. We had others that were probably not in the best of shape. I definitely was not in the best of shape compared to some of the other people on this trip, but we all handled the elevation differently. I was fortunate in that I was in Tanzania a few days early and went to the Ngorongoro crater. And so I was able to acclimatize at that kind of base level of 6,000 feet for a few days before some of the other people arrived. A couple of others on the group were from Colorado. So, they're already used to that. But then there were a number of us that were at sea level and came right in and then went straight up. And that, affected everybody differently. So as much as you train, as much as you go out and hike, the one big thing that would be important to training here is understanding how elevation affects your body and being able to at least go to some different elevations, 10,000, 15,000 feet to be able to feel how that affects your body. Kilimanjaro is just shy of 20,000 feet. And so it is the highest free-form landmass in the world. And while it's not the most arduous terrain out there and it's not a technical climb, the elevation is a huge X factor for even some of the most accomplished alpinists.
Did you find that many of your companions, or perhaps yourself included, took altitude medication with them as one sort of? I know that's certainly something as.
Yeah. So I've got a great travel medicine specialist who's I've worked with for many years. So she's, prescribed Diamox, which is, I guess, the generic for altitude medication. And the majority of our team, I guess that, our group that was climbing was taking Diamox. A&K recommends that you speak to a travel medicine specialist and get Diamox. And I think that those that were taking it on a regular basis definitely helped. But those that might have skimped on their water or definitely weren't eating caloric foods would notice a difference. And so sometimes it wasn't just the altitude that was messing with you, but maybe a calorie deficiency or a little bit of dehydration.
Sure. One other piece, just while we're discussing elevation and altitude, that certainly comes up with guests traveling to other destinations that are at a high altitude is altitude sickness. Yeah. And how does A&K handle someone who has severe altitude sickness on the side of the mountain? Yeah. And did anyone unfortunately have it and have to go through it?
They've got this trained group of guides that are looking for those things. We've talked about what were the symptoms to be on the lookout for. For most people, it's a common headache, it's nausea, and those are feelings that can pass over time. As you acclimatize, as you get used to that altitude, those symptoms would go away. One of my first problems with altitude was actually years ago when I was in China, in Yunnan province, just on the Tibetan border. This was around, I don't know, about 12,000 feet or so. And I remember just getting out of the vehicle and walking into the lodge where I was going to have dinner. And I just felt like everything around me was muted. The colors were muted. My taste was muted. My hearing was a little bit off. And I remember sitting down and then just having a bowl of rice and some water in front of me. And after just a few bites, it was like somebody had turned the lights on. I mean, like colors were vibrant. All of a sudden I could hear well again. And you just don't realize how altitude messes with you from time to time. And in that it can just dull your senses. And food, just calories, help really enhancing that. So what A&K does in their monitoring is that they will, every night we would use a pulse oximeter And we would go around the group and we would go through a breathing exercise to try to raise our blood oxygen level. And that, it was almost like a Karate Kid, Mr. Miyagi type of thing of by the 5th day when we got ready to summit, we had practiced this breathing exercise every single day that, Dismas was like, as we're getting ready to summit, use that breathing exercise as we're going up those last 4,000 or 5,000 feet. If you feel like you are being trapped or you're having trouble breathing, go back to this breathing exercise, because by you doing this that you bring in, you enrich the oxygen in your blood. And so, I found myself doing that on summit day, and it was a fantastic kind of way to combat that. So they're looking out for you. I mean, we had people that had headaches. We had people that had nausea, but everybody summited, all 19 of our group. And we had, I think the youngest of us were in their late 30s, all the way on up to, we had one gentleman who was in his mid 70s. So we had, a whole group of age ranges and capabilities, and we all made it, and we all made it back down. And, there were no severe altitude sickness problems.
That's a relief. I had a client in Peru that was in an oxygenated chamber for 36 hours to deal with altitude sickness, because she told me she didn't have a problem historically and wasn't going to take any medication, and then did. So,
but Chris, I think it's all about acclimatization, and the Machame Route that we went, and we'll get into the itinerary a little bit, but I think that the active recovery that we did, there was a couple times where we'd actually go and we would get to camp and then we would stop. And then we would go and actually take some little hikes on top of that. So there was a lot of things that they're doing where they've got this itinerary down to a science to make sure that you can acclimatize properly.
Wonderful. That's certainly a relief, I think, for anyone who's planning, any advisor that has clients interested in doing this. So let's talk about your itinerary, because it sounds like this could easily have taken you a month to do, but you didn't do it in a month. You did it in just over a week. So walk me through sort of from when you arrived to getting to base camp, and sort of how each day sort of progressed from there.
Yeah, so the total trek was just about 5 days, and so 5 days up and 1 day down, so six days total. Flew into Dar es Salaam and then took a small, bush flight over from there to Arusha. And as I said before, I did a couple of days just as a pre-trip up to Ngorongoro Crater to see that, because I hadn't had a chance to experience that yet. And then met the rest of the group coming back to Arusha. We started with a big, wonderful group dinner where we just kind of plotted. We all knew each other. Some friendships were closer than others, and we really got to just kind of have a great first meal and learn about what it is that we were going to be doing, and kind of get prepped for the first day.
All right, so you had a fabulous welcome dinner at the hotel in Arusha before starting, that kind of set the tone, set the stage, gave you the opportunity to chat and meet the others in your group that perhaps you didn't know as well. So you wake up the next morning and you go where?
So get dressed, get all ready to go. And so we hopped on a couple of buses, and then it was about a 2-hour drive or so to Machame Gate, where there is a lengthy registration process. So we all had to kind of line up and show our passports. And the reason what's happening here is that the rangers and the guides of the national park are, admitting each person, and they want to make sure that you're checking in as you are making the climb. So there's at least in theory, there is some oversight here from the government and others that from a safety and precautionary standpoint, that you're going ahead and doing this. So we went and we checked in. Again, at this point in time, we'd started early in the morning, and it's lunchtime, and it's all about how do you maintain that caloric intake. So we had a nice little kind of snack, coffee, food, and then we started on our first way up. And when you start, you are in very much a lush rainforest type of green environment. It was almost damp. We were very fortunate in that there was no rain on our entire trip, and so we were able to stay dry pretty much the entire time. So we're hiking through this beautiful lush forest. It's green everywhere we are, and these are actually fairly well manicured trails that we're hiking up. We started at about 6,000 feet or so, a little less than 6,000 feet at Machame Gate, and then that first day we got up to about 10,000 feet for our first camp. And again, the terrain could not be any more different from day to day. And I think that's one of the things that's so exciting about this trip is while it seems like it's a long kind of endless hike, every day is different. Every day the scenery is something unique and different and really, really neat. So once we get to camp, we get to Machame Camp. So we actually left from Machame Gate and then hiked all the way up from about, again, 6,000 feet. The elevation gain we had was a little over 4,000 feet. So we slept at about 10,000 feet at Machame Camp. And again, the great thing is that A&K had all of the tents set up, everything ready for us to go. So we just were able to relax, kind of take our boots off, catch a breather, and then we had a fantastic, really hearty meal. What was really fantastic about this trip is that we had a number of Italian hoteliers with us. And so since we're all in the business, we're all about the experience and all about surprises, they had brought in some of their own speck and some biscotti and some crackers and fresh bread and some aged Parmesan and Asiago. And so we had some great cheeses and meats to eat along the way. No alcohol, but because that's just that and altitude just doesn't mix. But between that and the hearty soups and all the food that we had from just our normal camping experience, it was just the first night was really unique in that over the top food, great experience, warm welcome, great way to cap off the first day.
And how long did you hike on the first day?
Yeah, that first day hike is just about 6 hours. So we got up early in the morning, had the van ride, got to the gate, had to do all the paperwork and process through that. And then a 6 hour hike with a lunch along the way. We had a boxed lunch. After that, we finished the rest of the hike. So six hours hiking, which is about almost the average. Now there are a couple days that are much longer, but 6 to 7 hours is about the most days hiking time that we had.
So you get to camp on the first night, and obviously you have a fabulous cheese spread, not a wine and cheese spread, but half of the best spread with your Italian hotelier partners. What time did you get up and get going the next day? Were most of the hikes, do they encourage you to kind of get up and go right away, or did you get to have sort of a semi-leisurely morning before setting off again?
Typically there's a knock on your tent at about 5:30. Wake up call, and then you've got breakfast, and then we're really hitting the trail and hiking again, between 6 and 7 a.m. the next morning. But hopefully you've gotten a good night's sleep, and you're energized and psyched and ready to go the next day.
So A&K then packs up the tent after you leave on your trek for the following day, and it's magically there for you when you get to your next point. So
the process, like what really worked for me, I laid out all of the things that I needed kind of the night before and had my bags packed and ready to go, just because I wanted to be able to sleep in and squeeze out every little ounce of sleep that I could in the morning once I had fallen asleep. So in the morning, once that wake up had come, kind of throw your boots on and get ready to go. Zip up the last few things in your bag. And then again, because A&K is carrying it all, once you've got stuff zipped up in your bag, they ask you to kind of take it out and kind of put it in the center and make sure that your stuff, you just kind of check off that your stuff is done and ready to go. And then you have some breakfast, and that was eggs and toast and a lot of oatmeal, because things that would stick to your ribs, that types of stuff. And again, we're off and we're walking really kind of by no later than 7 o'clock. It was really kind of 6:30, 7 a.m. Each day was a little bit different, but the day 2, we went from Machame Camp all the way up to Shira Camp. And again, because we were acclimatizing this day, we went, so if you recall, day 1, we went from 6,000 to 10,000 feet. On day 2, we only went up 12 to 12,500. So an elevation gain of 2,500 feet that day. Again, we did about another 6-hour hike, stopping for lunch along the way. And then once we got to Shira Camp, we had about an hour or so of downtime. Again, this was probably mid-afternoon or so, early afternoon. We had a little bit of time just take a breather. And then we did a little mini hike in and around Shira Camp just to keep, again, the blood flowing and keep that acclimatization happening. So we added, a few more miles. And again, I would say it was maybe another hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, but it wasn't strenuous at all on the end of day 2.
So hey, we're just here about the end of day 2. We just did a little extra hike after lunch, and you can see behind me our camp, and just did this nice little hike up this little hill here where we've got all these cool little rock croppings.
So day 3, you're now at 12,500 feet.
So on day 3, this was an acclimatization day. So we went from that kind of 12,500 feet. We went all the way up to 15,000 feet, and then we came back down to sleep again. So what we wanted to do is kind of push the edge of our limits and then come back. So from Shira Camp, we went to the lava tower and had lunch. And this is where through midday, we've got some rock scrambles and a couple of other things that we were doing. Once we got up to the lava tower is when people really started to feel that the altitude. And so 15,000 feet's, pretty high with Pikes Peak being at 14,400 feet. There's really not a whole lot of opportunity in North America or other places to experience, higher than 15. So that's where a number of people just started to feel it a little bit. But then with anything having to do with altitude, once you come back down, your symptoms typically, resolve themselves. So went up, had this amazing view of the lava tower. We know that there are some people that they can then go and scale with ropes up the top of the lava tower. Nobody in our group did that, but just a really kind of picturesque, beautiful moment that's there to be there and then kind of come down. And so that night is where, when we come from the lava tower, we come and we stay at Barranco Camp. And so again, back down to about 12,500, 13,000 feet is where we stayed for that next night.
All right, video journal. We're halfway through day 3. As you can see here, we're at the lava tower. It's about 15,000 feet up here. So starting to feel the elevation a little bit. I've done a good job acclimatizing. But you can see we've got the mountain there in the background. But the really cool thing is the lava tower itself. And so we're going to break here. We're going to have some lunch. We're going to just try to acclimatize for a couple hours and just get used to being here and at the altitude. But then after that, we're going to go ahead and descend. We're going to go back down about 13,000 feet. And that way we'll be able to get a good night's sleep. Hey, end of day 3, end of the hike that is a day 3. Here you can see we're at Barranco Camp. Came back down to about 12,750 feet. Quite a bit downhill from Lava Tower, but great day.
So you didn't, even though you came back down, you didn't stay at the same camp. It was pick up.
No, so we're still moving along, but so we just kind of like went uphill and then stayed there for a couple of hours over lunchtime. Didn't do a whole lot of moving, but just was trying to get our bodies used to the atmosphere there and that height and that altitude, and then continued moving forward in our trek, but came down in altitude a little bit.
Gotcha. So day 4, you're climbing again, but this time you're not doing an acclimatizing downhill. You're just going up.
Yeah. So day 4, we start off in Barranco Camp, and this time we're moving overland to Karanga Camp. and we go back up to a little over 15,000 feet.
Morning from day 4. Just had great breakfast, and I'm going to be getting started today. We've got a big uphill hike this morning, but then we're only going to be hiking till about noon or so, till 1 o'clock to get to the next camp. We'll have some ups and downs, but then it's basically the same elevation that we were tonight here on day 3 into 4. Have some time to rest and relax and acclimatize in camp. So we're looking forward to that, but really, really sorry to leave this spot. Really beautiful in Bronco Camp.
So while we had done it the day before, we had come down, we had slept, we had gotten used to that. And now the next day is, kind of straight up, but on a decent grade. This day was really only about 4 or 5 hours. This day is typically run a little bit short because, again, you're already starting off at a high altitude and you're ending at a high altitude. And the next day is when you would start your actual summit challenge. Day 4 is really much more of an acclimatization day. So while the previous day we had gone all the way up to 15,000 feet, this day we hiked to Karanga Camp. And there's only a minor elevation change in this day. And in that we're staying roughly around kind of 13,000 feet throughout this day. So we kind of peaked the day before, and then today was just kind of trying to take it easy through the hiking and the trekking that we had done.
All right, so end of day 4. You can see the mountain there in the background. We're at Karanga Camp. So had come up an additional 800 feet or so, and we've got one more day of hiking, and then at midnight we're going to go ahead and try to summit, which is really, really exciting, a little nerve-wracking at the same time, but you can see we've just got an absolutely gorgeous day. Hike today was really kind of cool, very rocky, had an amazing just start, straight up, and then we went to Kissing Rock, and so a lot of hand over hand and a lot of heavy rock climbing.
Right hand here. Yeah. Forward foot here. Left goes first. Okay. Then right. Okay.
And then from there we kind of plateaued out for a little bit, and then had a deep canyon that we came down, and then came back up to camp tonight. So short day. Started about 7 a.m. We were in camp, made good time, about 12:15 or so, and then we had a nice lunch. So very easy day today, other than the hand over hand types of stuff. But now you can see, just absolutely gorgeous.
As we moved into day 5, which also was a short day. Here again, so we started from Karanga Camp and then would end up at Barafu Camp.
Morning. So it's day 5. You can see the mountain behind me. Absolutely gorgeous morning. About 6 a.m. We're gonna go ahead and get started after breakfast, and we're gonna hike actually past the check-in station. So we'll stop at the check-in station this morning after about 4 hours. Then we're gonna hike another hour past a scramble point. The reason why we're gonna do that is just so that way we don't have to do it in the dark. It's just gonna be fabulous for helping us summit at about midnight tonight. So we're gonna get started about 11:30, 11:45. But hopefully by this time tomorrow at sunrise, we'll be on the summit. So check in with you all a little bit later. Leave you with our morning view.
This day was a little bit different for us, and in that we went on beyond Barafu Camp. So again, this would be a 13,000 foot elevation all the way up to a 15,000 foot elevation. But the one thing is the folks at A&K and know the rangers on the mountain very, very well and have a great relationship with them. And so when we actually got to Barafu Camp, this is where everybody sets up to do their summit push. And it is crowded. There are a lot of people there. There are, some public toilets and stuff, but it is loud, it's crowded, it's smelly. And again, you're competing with all of those other people when you start your summit push. And because A&K because it's Abercrombie and Kent, we were actually able to go a little bit further on beyond Barafu Camp for another 2 hours or so over some really difficult rocks that we would have had to do in the absolute dark of night. And so to be able to do that during the day and camp kind of in this extra exclusive secret camp that is a little bit beyond Barafu Camp made a world of difference for us. We were kind of cursing it that day because, it would have been nice to end a little early, but then to have the extra, the 2 hours ahead of us on the summit day, I think made all of the difference. And when I say summit day, it actually is really not all that much of a summit day. So while we got to camp, we got to this secret camp, we were there fairly early at about, let's say 3 or 4 in the afternoon. We then had dinner around 6. They wanted to have us have kind of a second meal around 9:30, 10 p.m. just to carbo load and really get up to speed. And then we would start leaving again at midnight. So you had kind of a chance now granted, we were up at 5, 6 in the morning on this day 5, and then had these kind of meals throughout the day. And then we were supposed to take naps, but we were so amped up and, kind of nervous about summit day itself that, well, for me, that just didn't happen. And so at midnight is when we get all suited up in the pitch black and we go to start the summit. So I hadn't slept now since 5 the morning before, and it's midnight. The summit day is the longest day that you've got. I mean, this is going to be pretty much a full day push.
Okay, good morning. This is morning of day 6. It's about midnight, just after midnight. We're about ready to summit. So I know this kind of looks like Blair Witch Project, but it's completely dark out. And we're going to go ahead and get started. And hopefully in about 6.5 hours, we'll be at the top.
So there's a number of reasons why you start in the dark. One, that you need to be this is a day where you go from 15,000 feet up to 20,000 feet, and then they need to bring you back down as quickly as possible, just because, it's safer that way, to 10,000 feet. So your total elevation change up and down is a little over 15,000 feet in the day. But you go at night because the ground is frozen solid. So it is, absolutely freezing cold. It was about 32 degrees Fahrenheit when we left, so 0 degrees centigrade. When we left, it then dropped even further down to about 10 degrees Fahrenheit. At the coldest point at about 3 in the morning or so. And the reason why you want it to be so cold is the ground is it's fragile and it freezes solid. And so it's solid when you are climbing up. The other thing is that from a mental standpoint, one of the things that we joked about is that if you could see where the top was when you started at that time, you would surely turn back and not want to do it. So that was one of the other things about it being pitch black. Is that you didn't see anything, you didn't see where you actually had to go. So you start off at midnight, and every hour and a half or 2 hours or so we would stop, and the porters would again, like I said, force feed you biscuits or cookies, make you drink a lot of water. We had to be very careful because it was so cold that our camelbacks would freeze. The lines in the camelbacks would freeze. And so there were other canteens of water that we would have to drink. Everybody talks about pole, or what they're saying is slow. And then that you're methodically taking one step in front of you. So you're just putting one foot in front of the other in order just to make it up to the top. It gets really cold. Your mind definitely starts to wander. My tip would be, make sure that your iPhone or your iPod is, and I said iPod, the old one, just so it's just music, but it's charged up and it's ready to go, so that you've got music to kind of push you. You got one earbud in and kind of one out, just listening to the environment. There is a fair amount of kind of rock scrambling that you're going to have to do on summit day. But what was truly inspiring about our group is that kind of around 3:30 in the morning or so, when we were all just kind of starting to hit empty but still had so long to go, is that the porters, they all start singing. And they start singing kind of some of their traditional songs and music. And it was just very inspiring. And, it pushed us all. It just made us go that much faster. Not that we go fast, but it just gave us the inspiration to be able to keep pushing through. We all knew that we were supposed to reach the summit at sunrise. And so one of the things that was probably the most poignant and most memorable moments for me is that, again, you're an absolute pitch black. And so the stars are so bright. There's no light pollution. Was able to get some amazing pictures of the Milky Way and of the mountain itself at night. But particularly on summit day, you see the one way that you can tell how much further that you've got to go is you see lights that aren't moving, and those are stars. And those lights that are kind of jiggling a little bit are some of the hikers that are ahead of you. So that tells you and gives you kind of a little bit of an understanding of how much further you've got to go. But what was so special is I remember kind of right around 5 a.m. or so, maybe 5:15, there's this thin red line that just comes over the horizon as the sun just starts to creep up. And it just painted this amazing picture of reds, purples, blue hues. It was really indescribable being at that altitude and being able to see those colors at that moment in time, and that just being knowing, okay, we're getting that much closer because we're going to be at the top when the sun starts to truly crest over the horizon. And so that was a point where I got goosebumps on beyond just the freezing cold that it was, but it was able to warm my heart in order to have us keep going and move from there.
Okay, you can't see me well, but if you can see that behind me, that is probably the most gorgeous sunrise ever. But we made it to the crater, or to the rim rather. So we are now still have a little ways to go in order to get to the summit. But only way that we got here was with a fair amount of adrenaline, a little bit of goo, and a lot of support and help from our porters. These guys are absolutely rock stars. Anyhow, got some stills to share with you. Exhausted, but got a little ways to go, and then we get to go down. Thanks.
At the first kind of big, huge milestone of getting really close to the summit is that you reach the crater rim. And there is a great sign that's there that says that you've reached the edge and you've reached the rim. And then from there, it's probably, another 20 minutes or 30 minutes or so to the actual summit itself.
So, just about to the summit. I'll show it to you in just a few minutes. We've got less than 100 yards to the top of the roof of Africa.
And that is just a very slow, methodical walk along the edge of the rim and kind of the crater to get to that sign that is what you had worked for so many days and so many hours, and are just so excited to be there. So here we are. We're at 20,000 feet. And very little oxygen, but we were all kind of altitude drunk and happy, and just so happy to be there at the top and to kind of celebrate with each other.
So here I am on top of Kilimanjaro, tallest mountain in Africa. Did it.
And while most people would think that the hard part was doing that initial climb and getting all the way up to the top, the hard part was really just yet to come, and that's going down. Not only did we go all the way down, but we went down to the camp where we were. We then had a break and had lunch, and then we went down another 10,000 feet at that point.
Okay, end of day 6. So summited early this morning. It was an amazing hike in and of itself. And then what we had to do is we had a little bit of rest back at the camp that we spent for the few hours of rest before. But now you can see here we're at Mweka camp. So we've come down from, being at 20,000 feet to 16,000 feet. Now we're at roughly 10,000 feet. We had a nice little over 5-mile hike from the camp that we had before to here. So looking forward to a dinner, and everything. Everybody's looking forward to getting some sleep. And then one more hike tomorrow, and then we're out of here.
The sun is now up. The temperature has risen, and all of the ice and the rock that was frozen and solid on the way up has now all turned to a powder. And so on your way down, you almost ski without skis as you kind of slip and slide, sometimes on your butt, in order to get down, and you slip through the rocks that take you all the way back down, and where you again have this great methodical slow climb up. You've got this pounding as your knees jar on the rocks on the way down. By noon, so we'd reached the summit roughly by about 7-8 a.m. We're able to celebrate up there for about 20 minutes or so, do some videos, just take some great photos, just really bask in the moment. From there, we were able to come down, which is much faster than going up. So while it took us maybe about 7 hours to go up, it only took us about 4 hours to come down. We're moving much faster at that point. But so then we hit our tent camp, and from there we've got lunch, and we're able to just take a little bit of a breather, just kind of recenter ourselves, get some calories in. And again, I can't tell you how much of just a difference of the food makes. You would get to a point where you just get in a zone, and again, altitude is messing with you, and whether you're eating a frozen Snickers bar at that point, because you don't have any choice, or some of those goo gel packets, you get that influx of calories and sugar, then you can feel like you can take on the world again. It's that caloric intake is so important with the altitude. On summit day, from leaving from the camp, going up to the summit, and then all the way back down to Mweka camp, it was about 7 p.m. by the time we got in there. Midnight to 7 a.m., 8 a.m. for the summit, then back down to the camp that we had originally started from by noon. Took about a 2-hour break, so then we're hiking again from 2 p.m. to 7 p.m., and just after dark is when we had arrived into that last camp. From there, it's only a short, 3 or 4 hour hike out to the gate from there. And so the funniest thing that I'll remember is that, every morning, everybody was kind of rudely awake and, can we get a little bit more sleep, or can we stay in a little bit longer? I remember we're sitting at the dinner at this camp after the summit experience, and we've got to get to the gate. the next morning, and they're saying, tomorrow morning, we don't have to get up as early. We can actually sleep in a little bit. Like if you want to get started around 10 a.m. And everybody hands down said, nope, what's the earliest we can leave? We were covered in dirt and dust and mung and all types of stuff. And we were just ready to get out of there. And we wanted a hot shower and a cold beer. And so everybody was so itching to get out of there. So the next day, the last day, you would have thought that we were sprinting. And where it was normally a 4-hour hike, I think we did in about maybe 2.5 hours as we were just kind of all skipping out there to get to the gate and to meet the vans to take us back to the Coffee Plantation Hotel. And that was the other thing that I didn't mention is that the Coffee Plantation Hotel will allow you to store bags. So we had additional bags and clothes and things like that for people that had done pre-trips and post-trips that were there, so that those were being stayed, and we all had day rooms that were there, so we would be able to clean up. So what was really neat is that we get to the gate, and we're so early that the van transportation, the little overland buses, these kind of cool 4-wheel drive things that they had for us weren't there yet because we were just so early. But what they did have is a boot washing station, and there are some local folks that are there that make a living off of washing your boots, and they are covered in this fine dust. And it was just kind of like getting a shoe polish, and we all kind of did it together, and it was great. Where we've got these people, and they clean them up, and you wearing them while they're doing it, and they look brand new. And the other thing is there's this little snack stand that's right there, and they have cold Kilimanjaro beer. And you would have thought that this was, the finest Dom Perignon that you'd ever had. And so we got a big basket of beer and shared it around with everybody. And to A&K's credit, we all kind of jumped the gun because, we're all just wanting to have this cold beer. And yet they're setting up, again, a picnic table, a beautiful spread, and they actually have real champagne for us. And yet, because we were so dirty and grimy and had done this accomplishment, and now, mind you, since we left at 6 a.m. and we'd gotten there by, about 8:15, 8:30, that beer never tasted so sweet. It was quite delicious that morning. So between that and a little bit of champagne, being back down at 6,000 feet, again, having been at that altitude, oxygen rich blood, we all felt that we were fairly invincible. And then the next best thing to drinking those things was actually getting to the hotel and having a hot shower. And mind you, even after, scrubbing, you're still going to find dirt and dust in crevices in your ears and all different types of places for at least the next week to come. But
I was going to say, I'm sure you're going to pull one of your pants or something out of the closet. You're still going to find dust today.
Yep. Lots of dust, all in socks and clothes and all of your gear and things like that.
That's incredible.
It was an amazing trip. Absolutely life-changing. Like I said at the beginning of this, I've been very blessed to have traveled to many places and seen many things. Some things extremely high end, and other things, just camping and roughing it a little bit. The one thing that I would say about this trip that made it so special were the people. It was the porters, the guides, everybody who was there on the mountain were amazing human beings that were supportive. I mean, this is something that they do almost every day. I mean, they're going up 3-4 times a month, sometimes more. And it's their normal way of life, and yet they understand how important this is to you, and are supportive, and are there to really help you make that accomplishment. And then the other thing was the group that I was with. We were all, acquaintances and business colleagues and friends before we left, but now we are all lifelong mates. We have experienced something together that was absolutely spectacular, and that is something that is a unique bond amongst us that no one will ever take away. And we have reunions and get-togethers, and we still have kind of our own WhatsApp group chat that we post to everybody. And so I can't thank Jack Ezon enough for pulling this group together and all the others that participated. You get to be very close with these people. All humility and modesty really gets kind of thrown out the window when you're in it with these folks.
Stuck on the mountain for a week together. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you're very, very close, and surprisingly, like, nobody got on each other's nerves. We all, just had the best experience together. And
I was going to ask, so which mountain's next? I mean, now you've got the basics down. You've got you've conquered that mountain. Which one's next?
Well, oddly enough, we had actually planned before COVID to climb Mount Elbrus this past summer with Exeter and bring back some of the band together. There was a number of people that wanted to go back and do this. We had the itinerary and we were getting deposits all together. And then unfortunately, this virus kind of sidelined those plans for us. But the
work's done now. So now we just need this to come to pass, and you're ready to go.
Yeah, and so Elbrus is also it's the highest peak in Europe. It's in Russia. It's very snowy, very similar in height to Kilimanjaro, but very, very excited to do that. But in the meantime, I have been doing a number of hikes, domestically here in the United States, doing some of the domestic mountains. Maybe not quite Denali just yet, because that's fairly technical. But things like Rainier and Whitney and Baker and a couple of others that have a great appeal to them and a great way to brush up on skills and find out if this is something that I still really love and am passionate about.
As a non-hiker, I've never considered myself a hiker. I recently did some hikes, and I'm like, you know what? I think this is going to come be part of trips now. I think we got to incorporate this. So I think it probably is going to be a lifelong love, and certainly something to aspire to and conquer all of the mountains, the big ones, shall we say?
Well, I mean, I feel like hiking has come out of nowhere because of COVID. So people have been cooped inside, and they need fresh air, and so by getting out and being closer to nature and just kind of seeing things. And now that we're in the fall, having all the fall leaves change. I'm here in my family home just outside of Charlottesville in the Blue Ridge Mountains. Just have perfect hikes to be able to take advantage of right now. And now that the leaves are all changing, just beautiful vistas of where we're located. So I'm spoiled that way.
A good reminder that our backyards are just as beautiful. You don't have to get on a 16-hour flight necessarily to have that. So
yeah, but Kilimanjaro is still worth it. So I would definitely when it's time to go again. That's definitely something. If you've ever thought about doing it, I would definitely do it. And the other thing that I would say is, our team at Avenue 2 is well versed in it. I'm more than willing to get on the phone or a FaceTime or a Zoom call with any client and answer any questions that you have firsthand. While, I speak very highly of Abercrombie and Kent, and I know that this kind of seems like a commercial for them. There are a number of great suppliers that can make that trip happen, and you can do it on a very aggressive budget, or you can do it very lavishly as well, and make it very, very comfortable. If this is something you'd always thought about or dreamed about, definitely one of our team can help make that happen for you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down today and talk about your incredible adventure. I've certainly found it inspirational, and maybe not in the next 5 years, but certainly it'll be on my bucket list as well. Yeah. So with that, we will call it for today. And if you enjoyed today's video, please don't forget to subscribe below, and you'll be notified of our next Advisor Access video as soon as it gets posted. Thanks again, Josh. It's been fun.
That's great. Carissa, thank you so much. This was a lot of fun. I appreciate doing this today.
Until next time.
Cheers. Bye.